I have met with the peers and mentors several times. Most of them are CTA members. Many of them are your favorite reps that have been in rep council and have been very articulate, and you would recognize and know them if you saw them. They are extremely anxious, as was talked about earlier, to do this right and to approach you as colleagues. I have told the mentors they have the best job in the whole county. I have told the peers, you have the toughest job in the whole county. So they're really struggling with how to do this and do it right, and not be offensive and be respectful. And so you're right. I think they would love some feedback. I can tell you we have heard from a number of people at school sites about their peers and mentors, and overwhelmingly their positive experiences. We also are hearing back from the peers and mentors themselves, and for the most part, their positive experiences. But I'm going to let David talk about what kind of feedback and what's the best way to do that when there are some concerns. They are eager to have your feedback because they really want to do this job really well. And you're right, this year is so important. We've got to get it right as quickly as possible. But you need to help them, train them, teach them how to be better peers and mentors. They will welcome that help. David, come on up. David Steele.
One thing we've said from the beginning of this is there's not one thing in our entire empowering effective teachers that's cast in stone. And there's not one thing that's perfect about it. And sometimes when I get emails, you know, it's true. I mean, we know that there are changes that will be made as we go through this time and things that will make better. And that's one of the things, and the reason we need to keep talking and keep listening is because we need to keep improving. Jean will tell you that way back in the early 90s, CTA in the district had tried to work on something like this that, you know, there just was not money for at the time. Jean, you know, obviously a member of the steering committee, but as soon as she brought up the idea of teachers being part of the evaluation process, it made complete sense to us.
Do you understand the needs and where your children are? And if you can talk through that and go back and say, after your evaluation, and what could we have done to make this lesson better? Where can you improve? And if you at that point can explain, okay, I know that so-and-so did so, but these evaluators are not out to get us. I think that, you know, they're in this boat with us too. And I just can't stress that. That's how I receive it.
Is it true that your peer evaluator does not have to meet face-to-face with you ever through this whole process, besides the time that they come into your room?
No. I mean,
They don't have to, though, right?
No, they have
For post or?
Every single time they observe, they have to meet with you for a post-conference.
Face-to-face?
Absolutely.
Not computer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The post-conference has to be face-to-face. The first time through, they're trying to make the pre-conference face-to-face, but I personally would rather see that go away just in the interest of your time. I mean, I really think for a pre-conference, the main thing they need is the information on what you're going to be teaching that day, just so they're prepared to observe. But there absolutely has to be a post-conference every time.
That's face-to-face?
Absolutely. Right, the adult education evaluation is going to be rolled out next year along with the other evaluations. As I was saying in the answer to that, in K-12, classroom teachers was what we rolled out this year. Mentors have always been 15 to 1, because the whole idea with mentors is we wanted to get them around to their first year teachers once a day, or once a week, I'm sorry, once a week. The peers have always been based on being able to do about 3 observations a day or about 400 a year. So for example, if a peer had only teachers that needed 2 observations, they could have about 200 teachers, and that would be about 3 a day during the days they can do it. Actually, we've adjusted it down a little bit. The other day when I was talking to Stephanie Woodford, the peers have between 160 and 185, but your point is a good one, and we are looking at one of the things, do we need to adjust it down a little bit more? But I will tell you some ideas about how I think that the new teacher effectiveness scores are better than MAP scores and done differently. First of all, in the new teacher effectiveness scores, every student has his or her own projection. You know, unlike FCAT, you know, like for instance in FCAT, when we look at did the student make an adequate gain? I mean, I don't know what the number is in middle school, but in high school, to make a gain in reading, everybody's expected to gain 78 points to show a gain in reading. You know, it's unreasonable to think that this student and this student and this student are already able to make a 78-point gain equally. In the formula that we'll be using this year, each student will have an individual projection based on the variables that are part of their makeup. You know, again, we hear a lot that ESE students or ELL students, you know, can't be expected to move the same amount. And that's a reasonable concern of teachers. And in the new system, those will be variables that will be taken into account in the formula to give a projection of how far should that student have moved. The other thing that's going to be better in this system, eventually it builds out into a 3-year measure. Now obviously for this year it's going to be a 1-year measure, but as we get 3 years of data, we will be averaging everything over 3 years because, you know, mathematically as you increase the N that you're looking at, the better results you're going to get and less subject to the 1 or 2 outliers that you have. You know, and as far as the FCAT versus end-of-course exams, another thing that we're trying to do is get away from MAP where every student has just one measure to start and one measure to end. And any place that we can, we want to put more measures in there, as many data points as possible to get the best picture of what's going on, so that it may not just be the FCAT eventually, it may also be the end-of-course exam. You know, we share the questions. I mean, if there's a question that Jamalia should answer, or a question that Stephanie should answer, a question that I should answer, we share them. But email questions into Great Teachers, and then, you know, if you're on your home email, it's still Great Teachers, but it's at sdhc.k12.fl.us.
Perfect. David, thank you so much for especially coming on that tonight. Now, better edit